Yeah, pretty excited to be here. This is a pretty cool workshop, I think. Um, so yeah, obviously the name. Actually, let me start sharing first. 1 second. Uh, okay, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so let's present. Okay, still see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so this is a pretty exciting workshop because this is the number one request that we get every time we speak to a prospective students or I'm speaking with my friends. They're like, okay, the fields in technology are so vast. How do I choose the best field for me? Can I leverage any past experience that I have? How do I know I'm gonna like a certain field? So we're gonna answer all of those questions. So let's get started. Um, so first of all, I really like to keep we have an hour for this workshop. I really like to keep our workshops interactive. It makes it really good. So if you have any questions at any point, feel free to stop me. Post a question in the chat. I'll read it. I'm monitoring the chat. Or if you want to even speak and you can totally unmute yourself and ask a question if you want to. That way it keeps it very interactive. It's an organic discussion as opposed to like me spewing words and you barely understanding anything, right? So we want to keep it interactive here. So with that being said, here is the brief agenda, right? We're gonna have maybe a couple minutes talk about what Skillspire is all about. That is the organization we're a part of. And then I'm gonna introduce myself, like who am I, why am I qualified to do this presentation, why you should listen to me, etc. And then we will try and basically find out who you are. If you want to like either type out an introduction about yourself or like unmute and like say a few words about yourself, totally welcome to do that. And I'll also say who this presentation is geared for. That will also come. And then we're going to list out the different tech fields. Um, and obviously, this is not going to involve every single tech field, but I've tried to make it broad enough where like even the fields that are not listed might come under one or the other fields, right? And then after that, we're going to get an overview of each field, and then understand like why you might want to choose one over the other, for example. Um, is that clear? Do you guys has any questions about the agenda itself? Feel free to like either raise your hand, the emoji, or like post a question. But if we don't have any questions, let's get into it. Cool. Okay, Skillspire. Skillspire is a general coding bootcamp, right? We have several programs. We have about 7 programs right now. We have 4 programs within web development for like different options. So we have um, a web development track, and you have 4 different options within that. You have, for example, the Python track, you have C Sharp, Java, and then the Node.js track. So those are 4 different tracks within web development. And then we also have a data analytics track, which is different. And then the last thing that we offer is cybersecurity. So it's like 3 different tracks, but within web development, we have 4 options, right? So that's how Skillspire operates. One more thing that's important to mention is that even though our bootcamp is a general purpose bootcamp for all people, we actually are a mission-based company and we target underrepresented communities. Okay. So that's a special thing that we do. So we actually go after community-based organizations and get students from them and make partnerships with other organizations. Cool. Something else that Skillspire offers is we offer mentorship in the form of an SSA. An SSA just stands for a student success advisor. It's a person who's basically invested in the growth of like every single student. So they get like a customized plan. They are held accountable. They make goals, for example, and then they basically are held accountable for those goals by this SSA, essentially. And then in addition to the SSA, we also provide mentorship and lab hours with like teaching assistants, right? In addition to instruction time. And then we also provide additional training for you to get a job or for you to for you to get additional skills that would make it easier to find jobs and apply for jobs, for example. Okay, so that's about Skillspire. Again, like if you have any questions, feel free to post in the chat or raise your hand, the emoji. But so who am I? Like a brief description of myself. So my name is Fadl Hakim. Um, I've been a software engineer for about 6 years now. At my last position, I was a senior software engineer for a company called Bestow Life Insurance, where we made it easy for users to go online and apply for insurance. Um, I've also worked at companies like Intuit Edible Arrangements. I've been a front-end engineer, a back-end engineer, and a full-stack engineer. I'm also completely self-taught, so I actually don't hold a bachelor's degree. I'm completely self-taught, so I broke into the field by myself. So I thought that, it would be uh, maybe helpful if I shared some of my experiences throughout this presentation about and how I thought about picking a field and like giving my experiences and going through different fields, and then helping people in that way. Okay, so that's a little bit about myself. As for my role with Skillspire itself, I am actually in charge of the product here. So I am the product manager. So that means I work on the curriculum, I work on different offerings, I work on enhancing or specific syllabi for our different courses, etc., hiring instructors, all of that comes under me. So now it's a chance for you guys to introduce yourselves. If you want to either unmute or, write a brief sentence in the chat, feel free to do that. But, and also maybe like an icebreaker question, what's your favorite color? Anyone want to go first? Okay, we have quite a few people here. Let's see.
Someone said red.
Someone said red.
An arrow. I hope I'm
An
pronouncing
arrow.
that.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, you know what? If you guys are shy, just post your favorite color on the chat. That's cool. Okay, just to know that you're actually alive and you're not AIs pretending to be human, which hey guys, some maybe that might be real in the near future.
Okay,
Um,
so Marquis James says green. Michael
yeah.
Vincent says, "Hi, I'm Michael Vincent. I'm brand new to all this, but very eager to learn. Blue is my favorite color."
Awesome.
Um,
Thank you, Michael, for the extended bio. I really appreciate it. So, guys, if you
I
if
who
you want to like give a brief bio in addition to your color, I would appreciate that. But if not, that's totally cool too. No worries. But
I who
cool.
says blue. Uh, NH says blue. Philly M says green. Stylianos Zepidi says team blue. Um, Marquis James says, Decatur GA, Realtor 51, single Libra.
Cool. Okay, all right. Thank you for responding. Okay, so what are the different fields we're going to talk about? So we're going to cover a few broad fields. So they are web development, data analytics, machine learning, cybersecurity, and UI design. Okay, so these are the different fields we're going to cover. We're going to get into a little bit of depth into each of them and talk about a few different factors. What are the different factors we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about, different things. So, for example, why would you choose a specific field, right? It might be something you enjoy. You might choose a field because it has like really good salary prospects or the opportunities are plenty for that specific field. You might have a specific experience that might make you uniquely qualified for one specific field, right? So then it makes it very easy for you specifically to break into that field, right? And then in general, like how hard is it to get into that field in technology, right? And then finally, it might be because there are like really good future prospects, right? So is this field gonna keep growing? Is it gonna like, exist in like 5 years? Is it gonna exist in 10 years, right? So those are some reasons, okay? Cool. So with that being said, let's get into the first field, right? And we're gonna go into here, if you have like questions about a certain field, if you've already have your eye on one of those fields, like when I'm going through it, this is the time to ask those questions, right? So Web development is the field that I would say it's like one of the broadest fields out there, right? Web development, and it's also known as software engineering in general. Most of it comes under web development. So it can be broken down very broadly into front end and back end. So what is front end? How is that different from the back end? So the front end web development actually deals with like the visuals of the website. So whatever the user sees, anything that the user sees is the website. So for example, if you go to YouTube, right? All the things that the user sees and interacts with. So in for example, like going to the search and like typing in like a video, the title of a video, and then like you getting the list of all the videos and then choosing a particular video. And then when the video you click on it, it goes to a different page and the video plays. All of that comes under the front end web development field, right? In terms of some things that are very interesting about front end is that, like I said, it's a very visual field. So even front end engineers, when they're like working, they often have the browser open. Okay. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So usually, front engineers, while they're coding, they have their editor right next to the browser, right? And while they're coding, they see the changes that are happening live on the website, for example. Like that's how front engineers code. So like as they're coding, they need to see, hey, is it like actually changing on the website? Is the app changing? Has a color change, for example, right? Maybe like you had a video box that was this big and you want to make it bigger. Has it gotten bigger? So it's a very visual experience. And one thing that is pretty cool about that is that it's very gratifying, right? So as soon as you code, you can see a change, right? It's very so you can it's like instant gratification. Like as soon as you start code, you can create a project maybe within a couple hours that looks amazing. Like creating a really good website actually doesn't take that long, right? So front engineering has that benefit is that if you are a very visually oriented person, you have an eye for aesthetics, then you might just you might have an knack for being a really good front end engineer. Backend engineering, on the other hand, is way more abstract. It deals with a lot more data. Usually, backend engineers will also need to be masters of databases. They'll need to understand how that works. They'll be concerned with like the where the data is stored, and then how do you get that data, process it, and then send it to like the browser itself, right? So backend is a way more abstract field. Guys, also keep in mind, I'm not like I'm not giving very technical definitions because this is more of an overview of each of these fields. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask them. Um, and generally, the field of backend engineering is way more complicated and it's vast. So, in terms of if you thought about a website being like a house, right? And this might not be the best analogy, but let's just go with it, right? Let's say if you think of a website being like a house, so all of the construction, the foundation, the cement, the stucco, like the wooden, the frame, all of that would be back-end development. And then like painting the house, right? And making it look good at the very end would be front-end development, right? Usually that's the analogy that's given. So um, and then like another thing about backend development is there's like another subfield within it. It could even be considered its own field, which is site reliability or infrastructure, right? So oftentimes you'll see like job descriptions for site reliability engineer or DevOps engineer or infrastructure engineer. All of that actually comes under backend development. Maybe a lot of the people who work in those fields were backend engineers previously, right? And what do those people do? Those people are responsible for making sure that a website or a web app never goes down, right? So for example, take Amazon.com, for example, right? Does anyone know when Amazon, like which time of the year Amazon.com makes most of their money? Is a question. What do you guys think? Which portion of the year? Which quarter of the year? Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4.
Okay, someone Feely says Q4.
Cool. Yeah, Feely, you're absolutely right, right? Absolutely. So, like, in fact, it's so disproportionate, right? The holiday season, like Q4 holiday season is so disproportionate. It's like 80-20. They make 80% of their money in Q4, and 20% of the money the rest of the year. So in those 2 months, basically starting from Halloween. It ramps up from Halloween and then it dies down in January, right? Like it's a ramp up. It's crazy how much money they make. Now the question is, imagine if Amazon.com, right? Imagine if Amazon.com crashed for one day in Q4, right? Imagine what would happen. Imagine how many billions of dollars they would lose, right? So now the site reliability engineer, so you understand where the name comes from, site reliability engineer, um, that person is responsible, or his team, like site reliability engineers, plural, they have, Amazon probably has thousands of them, right? They're responsible for making sure the Amazon.com website never like crashes, right? It stays working in perfect condition, right? Forget crashing, even if like for some reason there were too many people on the website and sometimes it gets too slow, that itself can result in such a huge revenue loss, right? For larger companies like Netflix or Amazon or Google, for example. So yeah, so it's a pretty difficult job. But yeah, like I said, we were talking about backend engineering and how it's like pretty vast. One more thing is that the field of backend engineering is way more mature. It's extremely mature, right? So people have been doing backend engineering for a long time. So you'll find, for example, people who've been doing Java for like 20 years, Python for 20 years, right? But then like you come to the front end and like React was only created like years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. 2013, 2014 is when it came out, right? So you won't find someone who has 20 years of experience in React. That's impossible, right? Same thing with like Angular or Svelte. These are all like relatively very, very new technologies. Okay, so why is that important for us? So if you're trying to choose the right tech field for you, would you rather go into a field where there are a bunch of people who have 20 years of experience, or there are a bunch of people who have 5, 4, 3 years of experience? What do you guys think? You guys see where I'm going with this, right? Obviously, you would choose a up and coming field over a very mature and stable field, right? Feely, cool, man. I guess you like the challenge, huh? Um, well, there is something to be said about that though, because like front-end development is like very it's very stable, or front-end development is very changing all the time. And the technologies are new technologies are coming in, old technologies are getting, thrown out, and then companies are constantly changing technologies in front end, right? So a lot of the jobs, right, will for example, a lot of the jobs, like existing jobs for front-end engineers, most of the time is that the company has a web app and you want it, the web app is using um, a specific technology, a very old technology, and your job is to change that technology to a newer technology. So a practical example would be, in my first job at Intuit, they wrote their web app using Angular, right, which is an older technology, and then they wanted to change that app to React, which is a newer technology, right? So my job, or we had a few teams that were assigned to this. We were basically responsible for porting that old code into new code, essentially, right? So if you're actually trying to get into web development, look at the job prospects even. Like how much experience is required for a backend engineer versus a front-end engineer, right? So, Feely mentioned like a very important point. Like you have more engineers, so you have more mentorship, but you also have to look at, okay, if there are a lot more engineers in backend development, do I have an opportunity here with front-end development, right? So that's something to consider. Also, if you notice, usually in most companies, so in most companies, including like the FAANG companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, most of the highest paid engineers in the company are going to be backend engineers, right? Or if you take like, let's say you go to Microsoft and you assemble 20 of their highest paid engineers, right? And then out of the 20, I will almost guarantee you 15 or more would be backend engineers. And like few of them would be front end engineers, right? Um, Out of that 15 or more that are backend engineers, they might also be front end or full stack engineers, right? But like just being a front end engineer, at some point you might hit a ceiling, basically. And in order to surpass that ceiling, you might need to learn backend engineering, right? So that's something to keep in mind in terms of salary, right? But um, but like Matthew was mentioning, you know, if you are a visual person, you care about the aesthetics or whatever, front end engineering is still like a great point to get into. But one thing to keep in mind is even if you join as a front end engineer or a back end engineer, you're never stuck. You can always like transfer, you know? Oftentimes, like as an engineer, you have to work closely with someone else. So maybe you're a front end engineer working very closely with the back end engineer. And then you went to your manager, you're like, hey, you know, I'm working closely with this guy. And I feel like I really enjoy this stuff. I really want to do what he's doing. And your managers are going to make it happen for you as long as you're a decent employee, right? Because they would rather hire like someone they know and they know has the aptitude and they know is a good person rather than hire someone they don't know for sure. That applies to anything, right? Yeah, and then these salary numbers that you see on the screen, front end engineering 100K, back end engineering 115K. Those are from Indeed.com. You can actually just type in Indeed salaries, and it'll take you directly to the website on Google. But yeah, those are the numbers. Generally, I have noticed, after spending 6, 7 years in the industry, that backend engineers get paid more. But like I said, you can always break in as a front engineer and then become a backend engineer to earn more money, right? So don't let that like make you choose backend engineering in the first place, right? So any questions there before we move on to data analytics about web development? Cool. Awesome. Okay. So it looks like we don't have any questions yet. So let's get into data. Okay.
Cool.
So
So
data analytics.
one quick thing before you continue. So everyone, I put a link into the chat. For anyone who would like kind of one-on-one personalized help, I highly recommend you book a call with us. So, we are more than happy to sit down with you and like give you personalized feedback, recommendations, and guidance. So, I'm putting a link in the chat for you guys to be able to book a completely free, 100% free career coaching call. So check out the link, and if you'd like more personalized workshop is great, but if you want more personalized help where we can actually sit down with you one-on-one, I highly recommend you check out the link. So yeah, take it away.
Cool. Sounds good. Yep, guys, that's a great opportunity. So you'd most likely be talking with, I'm actually one of the mentors. You'd be talking with someone who's like been in your shoes and is a full-time engineer, or has worked as a full-time engineer in the past, so you could get a lot out of that. But anyway, going back to our presentation, data analytics, right? This is a very interesting field, narrow field. So the amount of technology you have to learn is like fairly low. If you see the list of things I've listed here, it's Excel, Tableau, and then SQL and Python, right? And Python is a requirement for some people. So it depends on like your level and where you're working at. Some people might really value the Python experience. Some people might not because they might have other people working on that stuff. But basically, all of data analytics revolves around visualizing, extracting data and then visualizing it. So imagine that again, let's go with the e-commerce example, right? So imagine you're working for Amazon.com, right? So you want, like, data is power, right? You want to understand where your customers are coming from. You want to understand, are their buying habits. Sorry, I think I got disconnected. My bad.
I think we're good now.
Okay, sounds good. Um, am I back? I think I got disconnected.
Yeah, I can see you and hear you now.
Okay,
Can everyone
sounds good.
else?
Thank you.
Wait.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was saying like data analytics is an interesting field because it revolves around basically understanding who your customers are. Usually it's typically all about understanding your customers or understanding your audience, right? So you want to understand, for example, what percentage customers are above a certain age, for example, right? What percentage of customers are of a certain demographic? What are the buying habits of like certain customers, right? So it really revolves around that. It's also used extensively in like finance, real estate, for example, a lot of like the stock prediction, putting Excel charts about like historically this mutual fund, what were its returns, right? Based on that, can I say that this is a good mutual fund? Can I recommend this mutual fund to someone else? Or how has this stock been doing? How has, I don't know, the Exxon stock have been doing for the last like 10 years? How has like Coca-Cola stock been doing for the last 20 years, for example, right? All the stuff comes under data analytics. And it's a lot of like visualizing data. Tableau is like very frequently used. SQL is very frequently used. One thing that's very interesting about data analytics is that it's also like a pretty easy to break into because it's very easy to demonstrate your knowledge, right? So for example, if you just create personal projects where you take something like a freely available data set, right? So maybe you want to take the election data that's freely available, right? The election between like, I don't know, Trump and Biden, right? And you can figure out like Republican Democrats, like each state, how are they divided? And then like based on that, you can get additional data. For example, what are the crime rates in Republican states versus Democratic states? And then you can do all sorts of analysis like that. That's just one example. You could take other examples of freely available data, like for example, um, which demographics like watch more movies, for example. I'm sure like a company like Netflix would be very interested in that, right? So which demographic watch more movies and at what time do they watch movies, right? So different that's what the field of data analytics revolves around. What's really interesting is that some people they really get confused between data analytics and data science. They're very different, very distinct fields, even though like one leads to the other and they both deal with data. So there's data analytics and there's data science, right? So data science is more closely related with machine learning, where they are writing papers and they're writing algorithms, like very mathematical, about how to basically properly analyze data, right? How to properly train machine learning models based on data. So data science is a much more academic, more sophisticated field than data analytics. Just making sure that that's clear, right? Cool. And then usually data analytics, because it's like much easier and much narrower to get into, the starting salary is going to be like lower than someone like a web developer, right? So I've seen data analysts that started, as low as 50,000, 60,000. And then it can, depending on the company, it can also go to six figures, right? So yeah, that's about data analytics. Any questions there before we move on? Okay, so the next one is like very interesting. So machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence, they usually like when the public says it, that the public calls it AI, but within the field, we call it machine learning, right? Because that's what it is. It's a machine that is able to learn and do tasks itself, right? Um, about even a few years ago, I would say like even 3, 4 years ago, breaking into machine learning was a lot harder, right? But as of this year, there have been several courses, online resources that have made it so much more easier. So if you go on YouTube right now and you looked at machine learning tutorial, machine learning curriculum, you'd find a lot of resources. If you go to Udacity and like other coding boot camps, they offer this as a field that was maybe 5 years ago it wasn't even offered. It was offered by very few coding boot camps. It was offered very few courses on it in general, right? And honestly, I would say if there's one field that's going to dominate technology, it's probably going to be machine learning in the next 10 years, right? Because like machine learning has already in the last year, it's like every month they're having a breakthrough in terms of like what they can do. For example, like I'll send you guys some links that you can go check out yourself. I'll type it in the chat. So for example, go look at avatarai.me, right? Just type in avatar AI me in Google, and you'll go to a website. It's like this one person. He created this website that will take your photos, right? You have to upload 20 photos, and then it will learn you from those 20 photos, and it can generate you. It will basically generate images of you in whatever you want. So basically, if I upload 20 photos of my face and my body, and then I say, hey, give me a photo of myself standing on the moon, it will generate that for you. If I say, give me a photo of myself riding a jet ski, it will generate that for you, right? That's how powerful AI and machine learning has become right now. So you can imagine like this gets like very, very interesting, right? It's almost like AI and machine learning for in some areas has actually replaced graphic designers because they're creating flyers and posters. Machine learning is able to generate that instead of using a graphic designer and much faster, in fact, and cheaper, right? Um, Machine learning can also be used to remove backgrounds. So if you've ever joined a Zoom call before and you see like this person with his head floating, right? And you don't see anything behind him, that's actually done by machine learning, right? It like fuzzes the background, or I don't usually use it, but you'll see some people like they blur out everything in the background or they'll fuzz everything in the background. That's done by machine learning, right? The machine learning algorithm, it recognizes your face and your body, and it can tell the difference between like your body and this whiteboard in the background and this like this window here right here or like something else. It can understand that this is a human being and this is not, and it can isolate that in the image itself, right? Or in video, for example. So it's like pretty crazy the stuff that's already been accomplished. So if you really care about like stability, for example, like this field is only gonna grow in demand and it's probably gonna dominate in the next 5 to 10 years. I think the jobs for this are gonna skyrocket. So if you want to get in on a wave that is in the beginning and it's gonna skyrocket, I would definitely recommend machine learning. And I mean, as we can see here, this is like even the Indeed salaries, right? Which I would say are a pretty average, they're usually lower. I would expect if you see a salary here on Indeed.com, you could probably beat that salary, even, or beat that salary. If you have like a year or two of experience, you can easily exceed that salary. And as a beginner, you might be a little bit lower, but like if you have like a couple of years of experience, you can easily beat that salary, right? So the salary for machine learning engineering is $130,000, which is significantly higher than like all the other fields we saw previously, right? Um, okay, so that's machine learning. Any questions about machine learning in and of itself? Well, what's actually like very interesting about machine learning is that now previously you had to be a software engineer, already be a web developer or a software engineer to break into machine learning. But now you have a lot of boot camps and courses that will teach you machine learning from scratch, right? So you needn't have any experience as a software developer before. You can directly learn machine learning and get a job as a machine learning engineer. How easy is that to do? That's going to be a little bit difficult. See, like now, you know, if you see in the world of technology, what's interesting is oftentimes you don't need a bachelor's degree or in that field, right? Like if you don't have a bachelor's degree in computer science, like you can still get a job as a software engineer. About 15 years ago, that used to be a lot more difficult. So 10, 15 years ago, they would expect that you have a computer science degree or a software engineering degree from college, and only then you would get a job, right? In the last 10 years, a lot of people without any degrees, like me, or people who have like graduated from arts or accounting or anything else, are becoming software engineers, right? In terms of machine learning, the case still is that I think generally the industry hasn't matured yet to the extent where they are giving out jobs as easily or as much to people who don't have machine learning engineering degrees, right? So that could still be a point. One way to circumnavigate that, I would say, is like become a web developer first, right? Or become a data analyst first, and then try to pivot within the same company from data analytics to machine learning or from web development to machine learning. So what's actually interesting is like any company you join, like whether it's a most large companies, most medium-sized and large companies will often have like within the same company, they will have software engineers, machine learning engineers, data scientists, data analysts, etc. So to move from one field to another field within the same company is actually very easy and it's very underrated, honestly, right? And it might, so you might be a data analyst at a certain company. You're maybe you're making like 80 90K, but then if you become a software engineer in that same company, you might have the opportunity to make $150,000, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, cool. So that's machine learning. Okay, next, cybersecurity. So if there's ever one field that's probably never ever gonna go out of popularity, it's going to be cybersecurity, right? I think the the labor I forgot what the name of the organization is, but like there's this organization that like cares about like the jobs and everything. So they recently released a statistic saying that cybersecurity is like probably the most in-demand field, but it has the fewest respondents essentially. So if you wanted to get in cybersecurity, like this is a great time, right? It's the only caveat with cybersecurity being that it's a little bit difficult to break into. This field in particular is very concerned with certifications. So having a certification or pursuing a certification in this field, I would say is going to give you an advantage or an edge over other people. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Yeah. So they recently mentioned that cybersecurity is like one of the like they really want more people to get into cybersecurity. There have been organizations like, for example, Amazon. They're struggling to find cybersecurity specialists, so they invest in like training boot camps or cybersecurity training programs in hopes that people will join them and become cybersecurity specialists, right? Um, the reason I said it's difficult to break into is because, again, it's a very certificate driven field. So if you have like a CompTIA certificate or a Security Plus certificate or a Microsoft certificate or something like that, you're gonna most likely have an advantage. But studying for those certificates, it takes a while. Those certificates have some stringent requirements. For example, they'll say that you can't get the certificate unless you have 2 years of work experience, for example, right? So it makes it a little bit more complicated, but but there are ways to get around that. So for example, like you can like even if you are an IT help desk professional, right? You can kind of make it work and say that, hey, I've been a IT help desk for like 2 years. Like, does this count? And they'll most likely say yes. So there are ways to get around that. And usually I've seen that in my experience, like people don't directly, get the title of cybersecurity professional or cybersecurity engineer. That very, very rarely happens in my experience, right? Usually what happens is you're hired on as a systems administrator or a IT support person. And from there, you work there for like a couple of years and then you break into cybersecurity, right? The cool thing about cybersecurity though is that, again, like I said, it's evergreen. It's never going to die out, for as long as people have websites and web apps and computers, there are going to be bad guys who are trying to like break them. So you will need a force of good guys who are trying to save them, right? So that just makes logical sense, right? So again, it's probably never going to die out. The cool thing about this is that um, there are a lot of consulting agencies and like smaller companies that do the service. So oftentimes you will even see larger companies, whether it's like Amazon or Netflix, they'll often hire cybersecurity consultants, right? And these consulting firms or these agencies, like the work they do is like pretty cool. They actually, part of their job is to try and break a website, for example, and see what the vulnerabilities of a website are. How can you attack a website, for example? So this is something that I've been like very interested in for in a long time. I would encourage you guys to look into it, even though I would say it's a pretty difficult field to get into as a newbie. And again, the salary starts around $100,000 for a cybersecurity specialist. But keep in mind, like I said, it's hard to get in without prior experience. Okay. So those are a few different fields that we went over. Um, the final field is actually not like exactly technology oriented, but I wanted to mention it anyway because a lot of people are interested in it. UI design is very interesting, right? Right off the bat, I'm gonna say that I don't know what the future prospects of this field is going to be because right now, artificial intelligence and machine learning has gotten into they have gotten into generative art. They call it generative art. Again, you can Google it. I'll type it in the chat for you. So if you look at generative art, what they mean by that is using machine learning and artificial intelligence to create designs. I mentioned before, right, how they're already using machine learning to create flyers and posters for social media. But what if you can create like a whole website design, right, with artificial intelligence? How far are we away from that? Uh, I think like a few years, maybe even like a couple years, and we're gonna be there very, very soon, right? So because AI like getting creative very, very fast, and it's replacing graphic designers, it's replacing designers in general. So I would say like even if you are willing to pursue UI design, like maybe have like some experience in engineering as well. So for example, like UI design actually meshes really well with front-end engineering, where you're not only the designer, but you're also creating the experiences, right? So how does UI design differ from front-end engineering? The UI design is like the person who gives the plan, right? Like it's the architect, right? And the front end engineer is the builder, right? So if we say that in 5, 6 years, AI is going to get really powerful, that it's able to create the plan itself, then you still need someone to build it, right? So I would say if you are interested in UI design, like I would say do keep an eye on engineering as well and be ready to pivot in case like, the industry says that, hey, jobs are getting fewer or something like that, right? I would say it's very easy to get into UI design, probably one of the easiest because people just look at your portfolio. It's all about your portfolio, right? So if you go to websites like dribble.com, Dribble, Behance. So like these different websites, they're basically just portfolio websites. They're, online search engines or like designer portfolios. So you can go see mobile app designs, you can see website designs, you can see flyer designs, social media designs, all of that different stuff, right? With UI design, most likely you have to master like one tool. Either it's like Adobe Photoshop or like Sketch or Figma, one of these different tools. And if you're a master at one of these different tools and you have a very good portfolio to show, like that's going to speak volumes more than any degree or anything. Even if you do have a degree in that field, you will be asked to show a portfolio for your projects. And luckily, there are no certifications or any other requirements that I've seen, right? So that's something to keep in mind. One more thing I would note is that UI design is very interesting because you when you see a technology company, you will have for every uh, one UI designer, you might have like anywhere from like 5 to 10 engineers, right? So what I mean by that is the amount of jobs available for UI design is a lot lower than the amount of jobs available for engineering, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. But like I said, if you're, I mean, honestly, any field that you excel at, I mean, you are going to have a job. If you are really passionate about it and you excel at it, then that's like that's the best thing, right? Because you are definitely going to be better than other people. And when other UI designers get let go because of AI or whatever, they're still going to keep you because you need to make sure the AI is actually doing its job properly, for example, right? But yeah, that's a little bit about UI design. I don't know if that was like discouraging people from like going into UI design. But hey, I'm just trying to like present the truth. Again, like this is most of this is my opinion based on my research and my experience. Someone else might have a different experience. And so feel free to disagree with me. I'm not gonna be offended if you disagree with me. Does anyone disagree with the future prospects of UI design? Okay, cool. Yeah, that was our last field that we looked into. Um, so going back, like, out of all these different fields, like what's a good path? You're like, hey, you're giving me all this information. Like what, so I would say, okay, I would say, let me give you a formula, okay? Number one, if you hey, am I back?
Yep, now you're back.
Okay, so I was gonna say that I was gonna talk about like how do you choose a field, okay? So um, number one, if you have a passion for a certain field, definitely go into that because that passion is going to make you better at it. It's going to make you focus and learn and make you curious about it, right? It's going to transform something that is a chore to do to something that's fun. So if you have a passion for something, you already know, I do want to become a UI designer. I do want to get into cybersecurity. Definitely go after it, even if it is difficult, because that passion is going to definitely help you, right? So number two, if you're not passionate, if you only care about, for example, if you're like mildly interested in some of these fields, but you care more about getting a job quickly, I would 100% recommend either web development or data analytics. Okay, web development or data analytics. And then based on what within web development, different fields like we spoke about, and data analytics is pretty narrow. I would say within these two, choose one, right? So if you're a more data oriented person, you like working with Excel, you like looking at data, you like looking at charts, bar graphs, visualizing things, and then making a lot of PowerPoint presentations, data analytics, that's for you, right? If you like, for example, like I said, front end engineering, which is like very visual, creating software, creating web apps. So maybe like I posted a website about the Avatar AI me, right? If you want to create a website and you want to put something online where people can go and access it, you want to create an app where like your family shares photos, for example, or your friends are able to split money, right, after they go have lunch together, something like that, right? If that excites you, web development is for you, right? And within web development, my opinion is that it's much easier to break into front end development than back end web development because back end is way more mature, right? But back end web development is going to pay more. So break into front end web development, and then like when you hit a ceiling in your salary, then convert to back end web development. That's actually precisely exactly what I did, and I would recommend that path. Um, Cool. Um, Finally, if you're like up for a challenge, right? If you're up for a challenge, you care about future prospects, right? You care about future prospects a lot, and you want a job that you know will last for another 10 years, 15 years, and you know the demand for that is gonna keep going higher, and you know that like the salaries for this position are gonna keep going higher, then I would highly recommend either machine learning or cybersecurity, right? So that would be my general formula for someone who wanted to just break into tech. But yeah, we have only a few minutes left. That's pretty much the end of the presentation, guys. Appreciate it. Go check out our website, skillspire.net. If you haven't signed up for the Discord group, I encourage all of you to take a look at that. But if y'all, if you have any questions, I'm going to stick around for a few more minutes. Otherwise, we can call it a day.
So James is asking,
Anything else?
James wants to know how fast can you make money in UI design?
So okay, so that's a very interesting question, right? So for any of these fields, there is like a learning period. So let's say you're starting from scratch, right? There's a learning period, and then there is, after you finish learning something, how long will it take to get a job, right? So the learning period for UI design, I would say, is like pretty short. So I would say like if you're able to spend, let's say roughly 15 hours a week. So if you're able to spend 10 to 15 hours a week, I would say you could master it in like I would say anywhere from like 3 to 6 months, depending on your aptitude for it, right? It's just a reality that some people are going to get some things faster, some people are going to get something slower. But at the end of the day, it might take you a little bit longer. If you're still able to finish it, you still finished it, right? It might take you anywhere from 3 to 6 months, I would say. But then after that, prospects for you at design, you have to decide depending on like your company's you're at. I know even now, like UI design is still pretty popular, especially like if you're willing to work for like local companies and companies that care about hiring UI designers locally so that they can come in work at the office. You probably have an advantage, right? Cool. Any other questions?
So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. We'll be here for a little bit. I just want to give a final reminder to everyone. If anyone would like more personalized career coaching or mentorship help, highly, highly recommend you check out the link I just sent in the chat. You can book a completely free coaching call with one of our career mentors, and we can give you, personalized one-on-one feedback and advice and guidance according to, you know, your interests, your passions, your aptitudes, your skill sets, all that good stuff. So, and lastly, I know I mentioned this at the beginning. We do have a completely free Discord channel, and I just sent the QR code for that again in the chat. And this is for all of you who would like to, be a part of a nice network of people, like-minded people who are striving towards the same end goal, which is breaking into tech. And so we'll be, of course, in the group as well. So you can, it's really for giving you guys a place where a community where you guys can put forth ideas and talk about where you're currently at in your journey, and you can get feedback from our mentorship team as well as from other people in the community as well. And it's just going to be a very kind of interactive, wholesome community and environment where you can just get help for completely free. So I highly recommend you join the Discord group. I just sent the QR code in the group in the chat, and also definitely book a 100% free career coaching call with one of our mentors, and we'll give you that personalized one-on-one help that you really need. So I did see a couple of people did post some questions in the chat. So Felice says, in general, how is the interview process nowadays?
So it really depends on the company. That's a good question, Philly. Usually it depends on the company. So large companies like Microsoft, Facebook will have anywhere from like 4 to 5 rounds. It's a combination of like technical and behavioral. So they're testing your technical knowledge, and then they're also seeing how you are as a coworker, how you work as a teammate, for example. They want to make sure, how do you respond to certain situations. They'll ask you questions like behavioral questions. They might ask you questions like, if you have a disagreement with a teammate, how do you resolve it? If your manager gives you some feedback that you don't like, how do you handle it? If you have a suggestion for like a new technology, who will you go to? Questions like that, basically. Um, but yeah, it really depends on the company. It's kind of hard for me to give you a general overview because it's so dependent. But I think phase, like maybe a good topic for another workshop would be like, like different types of technical interviews, for example. But yeah.
Cool. Styliano says, what about full stack? If you don't mind, do you mind elaborating on that? What exactly it is about full stack that
I
you
think I
want to
understand the
know?
question. I
Okay.
think he just wants to know correct me if I'm wrong, Stylianos, like I think we didn't mention full stack here, so you're asking what about like full stack web development, right? So the reason I didn't mention full stack web development because it's not really. I mean, you'll see a lot of coding boot camps that have full stack programs. In fact, like we have full stack programs, but usually the focus is going to be on like either one technology area, either front end or back end, and that's because like this mythical full stack engineer is someone who is a master of both front end and back end. That person usually doesn't exist, right? And usually full stack is used as a marketing word for people to think that, oh yeah, it's a full stack engineer, you'll learn everything in the same time. It doesn't work, right? Most companies want, if they hire you as a front engineer, they want you to be really good at front engineering. If they hire you as a back end engineer, they want you to be really good at back end engineering. And I mean, think about it. It's a little bit crazy to think that uh, a new hire who's never had any experience before or has had minimal experience before can master both front end and back end. That's kind of crazy, right? So I would say anything I said about front engineering or back end engineering, the same things would apply for full stack. Again, like we want to understand that web development is like, even though it's a very broad field, there are front engineers and back end engineers. Like to become a back end engineer from being from a front end engineer, like if you're a front engineer and you've been doing front end for like 3 years, if you then learn back end engineering, I mean, right now you're a full stack engineer, right? So, so it's not like it's this separate crazy thing, basically. Hope that answered the question. Okay, so Robert asks, what is the availability for internships of internships for analytics? Um, So I think free internships are like definitely it's more generally available. I would say internships in general are more prevalent for college graduates or people who are in college and not yet graduated. To get an internship as a non-college graduate or someone who's been working and wants a career shift, that's going to be a little bit difficult. In those cases, like I would look at nonprofit organizations that will take you on as an apprentice or an internship. At Skillspire, for example, we have a data analytics program, and then we provide an internship for like the graduates of that program. But we are partnered with a another organization for that. But from what I've seen in the industry, that's pretty rare. Um, Okay. What is expected from you as an intern? Usually interns, not much, just that you know the basics and you're willing to learn. Honestly, the most important thing for an intern or a new hire, I would say, is the curiosity to learn and grow and to like get advice and mentorship and apply that mentorship and advice in your work, right? So it's more, I would say it's more of an mindset, attitude, as opposed to like how much knowledge you already have. Okay, cool. Looks like that's all the questions we have, and I think we ran over time. Are we good to call it a day, Phase?
Yeah, I think so. Just as a final reminder, everyone, do leave your emails in the chat because we'll be sending the recording of this workshop to everyone who does leave their email. And we will also keep you updated and posted on future workshops and events just like this one. So I highly, highly recommend you put your email in the chat. You're free to unsubscribe whenever you wish as well, so you're not bound for life. Also, I did post the QR code and book a meeting links into the chat for those of you who are interested for the Discord channel and the career coaching call, the free career coaching call, and the free Discord channel. So definitely check those out. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Fadil, for the very in-depth and thorough presentation. I hope it was very beneficial, informative, and useful for all of you. And hope you have a great weekend. And I hope you all have an easy journey trying to break into tech.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.